Citizens in Kosovo are also fearful of organised crime and arms trafficking. We saw the attack in Banska recently, where huge amounts of weapons were brought into Kosovo under the nose of NATO. How bad is the situation with weapons and arms trafficking in the region?
Well, I think that the situation in the Western Balkans, broadly speaking, is very problematic. We know that there is large scale trafficking of weapons, smuggling of weapons, human trafficking, I think in many respects this problem stems from weak states. It stems from governments that don't have the capacities that we normally associate with the modern state, in the sense that they don't have complete control over society. They are unable to use police forces, bureaucracies, ministries to gain control over these flows of weapons and people. And in some ways, I think you have to get at the root of the problem, which is to build state capacity. And building state capacity over time requires the Western Balkans, I think, to be integrated into Europe. And that's why when it comes to Kosovo and Serbia, when it comes to the relationship between Republika Srpska and Bosnia and Herzegovina, these are issues that cannot be let to fester. And that's simply because they don't pose a risk just of ethnic violence. They also make it very difficult for governments to build state capacity and to create the functioning institutions that are needed to get control of illicit flows of arms and people.
The report also found that 80% of respondents want more collaboration between law enforcement and NATO and the EU. Obviously, Kosovo, Albania as well, they want EU membership. Kosovo wants to be a part of NATO. Do you see this as a reality in the next 5 years, 10 years for Albania and Kosovo?
Well, I do think that the Western Balkans, which received top priority in EU and NATO policy in the 90s, in some ways fell off the radar screen, mainly because of 9/11 and the switch in focus to the Middle East and counterterrorism mission. More recently, we have the Russian invasion of Ukraine, and now a terrible war that's unfolded between Israel and Hamas. And as a consequence, I think that Washington, Brussels, European capitals have been distracted. But I also think that the trouble that is brewing in the region has garnered a new urgency in the West. You have, I think, in the Biden administration, a group of individuals that are Atlanticists by nature, including the vice president. The vice president has, the president, including the president, Mr. Biden, who has been very involved in the Balkans for quite a long time, and the people around him. And I think in Europe as well, you're seeing renewed engagement. And so I think that the region has suffered from the neglect that have come from Washington and the EU, but right now I think they're attempting to redress that neglect. And I'm ultimately an optimist. I ultimately believe that the region will end up fully anchored in Atlantic institutions. It's a question in my mind of when this happens, not if this happens. And that's in part because a number of the states of the former Yugoslavia are already there. They're in the EU, they're in NATO, or both. And as a consequence, the neighborhood is one that I think is oriented to the West. Now, the Russians are mucking around. They're trying to prevent that. They don't miss an opportunity to exploit political and ethnic divisions in the region. But I do think that we know where this story will end. It's just a question of how and when are we going to get there.